Hey everybody, it's Todd Seymour. Today we're going to talk about uh, possibly a touchy subject when it comes to how you think about money. And I tell you, my job is to make you think differently. And so today we're going to talk about making financial decisions versus the psychological decisions. Those are the two things that I feel like people are battling when it comes to making money decisions. And so a lot of us either gear one way or another. And I say a lot of times my job is to balance you out a little bit. And if you recall, I tell you that because money does nothing but give us choices later in life. And the more money we have, then the more choices we have. And that can come into play on a multitude of things, whether it's paying down debt, retirement, all different kinds of things money does. And if we allocate money properly, then it's going to allow us to have such a more comfortable retirement life. Sometimes we focus so much on the now, we don't look at the future. And I always say, you got to balance the now and the future. You can't save everything, you can't spend everything, you got to find a balance. So in order to do that, let's talk a little bit about some accounting terms. I won't bore you to death with my accounting background. It's probably one of the more exciting things. Just joking. So assets minus liability gives us, in this case, what we're talking about is a net worth. And then we have income minus expenses. Hopefully gives us a little bit of what's called discretionary income. And that's just money left over. And so how do we focus on all these different types of things and allow us to have the most of this, the least of this, most of this, least of this, right? And I feel like with our clients that so many of you, especially younger people, focus on this liability. You're so focused on paying down the debt that you forget about the asset part of it. And when you retire, if you have no debt, that's fantastic. But if you also have no assets, you're not going to retire, I promise you, because realistically, assets are going to produce income. Income is going to help you pay expenses. It just flows down to each other. And so, again, when I have conversations with clients, they're so focused. I even had a recent conversation recently with a friend about, man, I'm so focused on paying down this. This is the biggest thing that I find, is that everybody is focused on paying down the house. And that's fantastic. But again, my job is to make you think differently. So these are some of the assets that we all have, right? We have a house, we have a car, and hopefully we have some type of emergency fund and or investments. And by investments, we're going to talk about 401ks. Again, not too dramatically, but enough to IRAs and non-retirement assets. Now I'm going to show you just some of my thinking a lot. And again, it doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just to make you think differently. So let's say we've got a couple scenarios, right? We can have a house that has a 30-year mortgage at probably, let's say, 4%, or a 15-year mortgage at even 3, maybe 3.5%. And we've got a car loan, and that's probably a little bit higher at 5%. And then we've got these different types of investments. And so I tell people an easy way to think about this is to look at these like buckets. And what you try to do, especially with liquid money, is you're trying to set yourself up for different types of buckets. The more buckets you have with investments, then the better off you're going to be. The car loan or the car itself, we're really not going to look at as a bucket because remember, houses typically appreciate or grow in value. Cars do what? They depreciate. And then emergency funds, investments, those kind of things, those appreciate. And so, a couple things. It amazes me how people focus on trying to pay down this loan right here when you're paying down the loan and the asset value is decreasing. Makes no sense. Just pay your regular 5% or whatever it happens to be. Realistically, today's debt world is so realistically low that it makes no sense to pay things off quicker. Which brings me to the home. So, either if you have a 30 or a 15-year mortgage, that's obviously up to you. I strongly recommend a 30-year mortgage only because it gives you flexibility. And everything in life is about having monetary flexibility. Let's just say, for example, this payment here is $1,000 a month. Well, realistically, your 15-year, let's say, is $2,000, right? You're trying to pay it off quicker. And I tell clients all the time that the reason why you should think about choosing a 30-year mortgage is, one, that the average person lives in their home for only 13.3 years. So, it brings me to the point of everybody's so focused on paying down that debt, regardless if it's a 30 or a 15-year, and realistically, you're not even going to be in the house either one of those terms of the mortgages. So what is your incentive to pay it off? Well, you're going to come back to me and say, yeah, I want to be debt free. I don't want to have that liability over me. And if that's the case, then what about this bucket right here? So you should have two assets, right? You should have money that's in your home that's building up value, regardless if you want it to or not. And then you should have money over here that you can get to if you need it for an emergency or retirement down the road. Think about this. The feedback that I get from people is that, yeah, but this bucket here, this is risky. Yeah, there's some risk to it, admittedly. And my comeback will be, what about this? There's risk to a home too, right? So you bought your house in 2008 and you bought it for full market value, and then the market collapsed. That there wasn't risk in that? Everything as far as investments, we'll call these, because a home is an investment also. Later on, you'll sell it, you'll get a rate of return. So everything that has an investment, we'll call it philosophy, is going to have risk to it, admittedly. But there's no reason to pay that off quicker, because you got to find a way to pay and fund both of these buckets. Otherwise, you'll never get to retire. So we're going to talk also about the reason why you should look at these two assets here. Many people, it doesn't matter if you have wages or if you're self-employed, especially the self-employed, it's amazing to me how overlooked on these types of retirements that you have. So think about this. If you made $50,000 today, 2020, you're in the 12% bracket. And if I can contribute 10% to my 401k, I'm going to put $5,000, right, through my wages. That's the beauty of a 401k, is that you don't really miss it. And so I'm only going to pay tax on this $45,000, and $5,000 goes into my 401k, and I save $600 immediately, right, in the 12% bracket. And so the beauty of it is when you file your tax return in April, you're going to get a check back, almost like a tax savings. And so when we talked about risk and putting money in, think about this. If I said, yeah, if you could put, whether you're self-employed, you can put money through different types of retirement plans, including 401ks and IRAs. Let's say the market made zero and you put money into with one of these retirements, you still made 12% savings. Where here I'm paying a mortgage that makes 4 or 3. So let's say, just being conservative, that these investments made 5% for the year. We'll call that rate of return. Well, so for that 1 year then that I put that $5,000 in, I just made 17% versus paying off a debt that is 4% or 3%. It makes, to me, it makes no sense why I wouldn't want to build two assets at the same time, One of them, especially where I could get money out of if I need to. So you're going to come back to me and say, yeah, if I need to get money out of this house, I can do what's called a home equity line of credit. And you could, right? You can borrow up to 85% of your own money and then probably pay a rate at 5%. But I also could borrow against that, my 401k. So if I had money in my 401k and I'm just borrowing against myself, so really then there's really no interest at all. There's always a comeback, right? It's about this piece right here. Boy, this piece gets in the way. A lot of times you just have to think, would I rather have one asset, which eventually I may let go down the road anyway with family, I may downsize, I may change locations because of job, or would I rather have two assets where I can put $1 into this and every single year for the rest of my life, regardless if I'm looking at it or not, it's going to be working for me. It's always going to be making me income and dividends. It's always going to be reinvesting, buying more shares. And if I need to, I can always come in there and tap it. I can always come in there and pull out money. And if I don't, I can keep messing with putting money into these retirement plans, getting tax advantages of it. In today's world, with the way that the itemized deduction rules have changed, you're not getting any benefit by having the mortgage, I understand, but that doesn't give you any reason to pay it down any quicker. What you should do and what you should look at is say, yeah, would I rather have two appreciating assets where one's fully liquid, or would I rather just have one asset that's paid off in full? And the hardest part is just, again, getting you through that and making you think about it. So again, I'm not trying to say that there's a right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of what do you want in life. If you focus so much on, let's say, paying down that 15-year mortgage and putting nothing in this bucket, think about this. Money grows. That dollar every 7 years is going to double. So 7 years, it becomes $2. 7 more years, it becomes $4. So now my $1 is now $4, and I paid off this, and I lost that opportunity to get that increase. And then, but I'm paid off here. So, I have, going back to here, my net worth is whatever the house is worth that I paid off, but I have nothing over here. Again, instead of having money here, money here. We're trying to do nothing but build up our buckets. So hopefully that made sense. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, I'd love to hear it. I always am so intrigued on how people think about things. To me, out of all the different areas that we cover, thinking and the psychology of money and the comfort that you have is the most important thing. Life, though, is about trying to balance those things. So taxandtrusthelp@gmail.com is where you can reach us. I hope this gave you a little bit of insight onto some things and thinking differently, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much.